Welcome to the Food That Makes Us, recipes that comfort and connect us. I'm Olya Hercules in my London kitchen, and today I want to show you how to make one of my most favorite recipes from Ukraine. It's my grandmother's recipe. Grandma Lucia used to make it with pork ribs, but today we're going to do it with duck, because that's my mom actually kept ducks at her house for the past kind of 15 years, so she switched from pork to duck in quite a lot of dishes. But vegetarians, don't switch off the video, because I'm also making a vegetarian version with mushrooms for Joe, because he's veggie. And my mom actually started adapting all of these super precious recipes, making vegetarian versions for him, because she really wanted him to try it. I'm just going to explain a little bit what NUDLI is. So very simple ingredients. You know, it's that kind of magic when you have about 3 or 4 ingredients, but you do them in such a way that it's just the most delicious thing in the world. So for the non-veggies, we've got a duck, and I'm going to show you how to take it apart. So we're going to use the legs and the breast for this dish, but of course you've got the delicious carcass and the giblets left over, and we're going to make a broth with that. And honestly, if you look at the prices, like if you're buying a duck from a supermarket or something, look at how much the legs are, and then look at how much the whole duck is, and it tells you like how much per kilo it is. And the legs will be, 2 legs will be, you know, almost as much as one whole duck costs. So I always with all the birds, chickens, ducks, whatever, I'll buy a whole bird. It's not that hard. I'll explain how to, you know, take the meat off, and just how many dishes you can make out of this one bird. Okay, so for Joe's version, we've got some portobellini mushrooms and some shiitake, but you can use a combination or just one mushroom, you know, whatever you've got to hand. We've got some onions here, some bay leaves, some potatoes, and then we're gonna make the actual NUDLI, which are actually these delicious dumplings that you put on top of the stew. So I've got kefir, and this is actually baked kefir, ryajanka. We can easily find it in the UK. If you can't find it, normal kefir is fine, or even yogurt diluted with a bit of water until it's that kind of consistency. And then today I'm using something new. I'm gonna use white spelt flour. My mom just uses normal plain flour, and you can use that. That's absolutely fine. But I thought, why not? I'll just try it and see what it's like. And then we've got a little bit of baking soda as well. So just to explain, it's very simple. We're gonna cook the potatoes, onions, duck, and for Joe mushrooms into a kind of like a bit of a stew until the duck is almost falling apart. And then we're gonna make this delicious, super soft dough. It's gonna be quite wet, but really kind of fluffy in the end. And it's the same technique as when we do cinnamon buns. So we're gonna roll it out, we're gonna put a little bit of oil in it, roll it up, and then cut it into these delicious kind of like looking swirly, snaily dumplings. And then we're going to put them on top of the stew, close the lid, and they're going to absorb all of those stewed juices on the bottom, and they're going to be really fluffy and puffy on top. Just a little bit about the history of this dish. So we think that it might come from a German dish called strudli. My family is actually from Bessarabia area, so it's the Odessa region closer to the Moldovan border, so southwest of Ukraine. And there were quite a lot of German villages around there. So, you know, during the Russian Empire, they've encouraged quite a few kind of foreigners to come in and work the land. You know, they needed kind of like workforce for farming, etc., to develop some of these southern Ukrainian lands. And there were loads of little German villages everywhere. So maybe this is how it kind of seeped through and turned into NUDLI, which my grandma used to make. Okay, let's go, let's make it. I'm gonna show you how to take this duck apart. Please don't worry. It's really not that hard, But even if when you take the breast off or something and there's a little bit of meat left over on the bone, don't stress, because we're actually going to use the carcass to make a soup. And a little bit of meat, sticking to the bone is not a bad thing. We can just pull it off afterwards and eat it in the soup. So there's some giblets in there, and I'm gonna use them in the soup as well. Everything apart from liver. So this neck, amazing. So I'm just putting it straight into the pot. I'm gonna, put some water in, one onion, and it's just going to be ticking away there. I've got the heart here as well. It's going in. One thing that I wouldn't put into my broth is the liver, because it becomes too bitter when it cooks for a long time. So I'm actually just, chef's perk. I'm just gonna fry it in some butter and put a little bit of salt and just eat it on a little bit of toast as a little treat to myself. And then I've got these gizzards as well. And yeah, and I'm just putting it in there. Right, so first of all, we are also we're going to take off the tail, yeah, the bum. It's got loads of lovely fat on it. And you can just render down the fat, and for roasting your potatoes or whatever. And also these kind of ducks, this is a Crescenum duck, also has quite a lot of fat inside. So I'm just gonna cut this bit off as well. And again, I'm just going to use these bits of skin to render the fat out to use in another recipe. And then the skin is going to go crispy and delicious, and my son Sasha will love it, with a little bit of salt as a treat as well. So we're gonna go ahead and do the legs first. I'm just going to make an incision here. This is a butcher's knife, a butchering knife, and it's worth a worthwhile investment, I think, if you're going to start doing something like this. It's not an expensive one. It's a Victorian ox, and I've had it for ages, and it's super sharp and really good for this job. But you can use a normal knife as well. So there, I'm just making that incision, and then I'm just gonna actually just crack where the joint is, just like that. And it's the bone has popped out of its socket, and I'm just gonna cut through, never cut through the bone, but just cut through the bit where it's popped out, yeah? And that's it. How easy was that? So we're gonna use this for our NUDLI. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. So just cut through, just like that. Cut the skin a little bit further down here, and then I'm gonna pop it out of its socket, and then just feel where that popped, and just cut it off. There. So 2 legs done. The wings and the bones are gonna go in this pot for the soup, but the breast I'm gonna use in my dish as well, in the NUDLI dish. So I'm just gonna, so this is your breastbone, and we're just going to, so you can feel through it, and then we're just gonna start cutting on one side of it, yeah? So just like that. First of all, just cutting through, and kind of like run your fingers through just to separate the meat a little bit, and then just cut as closely to the bone as you can. But again, as I say, if a little bit of meat is left over on the breastbone, that's fine, because it's just gonna make the soup a little bit tastier. This is looking good now. So I'm just kind of like, cutting through it. There's a wishbone here somewhere. Just, there you go. And then this is a nice, nice hefty breast here. We're gonna do exactly the same on this side. So this is the breastbone, and I'm going to go on this side. Go away! Man, these flies. So there we are. Just cutting close to the bone with these kind of movements. You see, just like shoo, shoo, just like that. I love a sound effect. Okay, and then we're just gonna cut the breast off. See, there's a little bit of meat left here and there, but that's fine, because we're not going to throw this carcass away. There, and we've got 4 nice pieces of meat for our dish. And now for the pot, like my mom would probably have a big enough pot and she'd just plonk the whole thing into the pot, but I'm going to take it apart a bit. So again, with the wings, we're just gonna need to pop and cut through the joint. Okay, and there, it's just going in there. There's quite a lot of fat here. I want a little bit of fat in my soup, but not that much. So again, I'm just going to cut this bit off and add it to my little skins here that we're gonna render and use the fat. So there, I'm just taking this fat off, and then we're gonna do the second wing. Again, just cutting through the joint, never through the bone. There. And then this as well, you can kind of break apart just to make it a little bit easier. There. And this is ready for my broth. This is ready for my NUDLI. This I'm gonna eat myself. And this I'm going to use to get the fat, the duck fat that I can use for roasting potatoes later. Okay, so we're just going to prep everything that we need for the stew, for both the veggie and the duck one, and then we'll just kind of like start throwing things in, and it's really, really, really simple. So the onions, we just need to slice them. So I'm going to cut it in half and then into, not too thinly, not too thickly, kind of just into half rings. Okay, something like that. And then I'm gonna show you how to do the potato now. Okay, there's your onion. And for the potatoes, we're just gonna do wedges. So cut it in half. Okay, and then if it's a small one, you know, we just maybe do something like that. Just a wedge like this. If it's a big one. Ah, this onion is so strong. And the big one may be into 3 wedges, which I would just do like this. So big chunks of potato, yeah? Okay, so before we make the dough, the dumplings or anything, we're just gonna start these stews. And I'm gonna make the vegetarian and the duck one at the same time. So for Joe's, for the mushroom one, just gonna put some oil in, and you can absolutely make it vegan as well. Just use water instead of kefir, or even some kind of a nut milk might work as well. Oat milk might work. Yeah, so the oil is in, and I'm just going to drop half of the onions in. Just gonna wait for it to heat up. Did I put it on? Yes, I did. I'm gonna wait for it to heat up a second. I'm gonna put the onions in and a big pinch of salt. I'm too impatient today. Let's just go. It will heat up. Okay, and then the other half I'm gonna leave for the duck. Okay, so the onions are in. I'm just gonna put a nice kind of pinch of salt in. Make sure that they're covered in oil, and they're just going to soften there and start coloring a little bit. And then I'm gonna add the mushrooms, cook it all off together, take them out, brown the potatoes, then put everything together, put a little bit of water in, and just cook it all for, I don't know, half an hour, something like this. For the duck, it's been out of the fridge, so it's better when it's room temperature rather than fridge cold. And I'm gonna put it into a cold pan. And I'm not gonna use any oil because there's quite a lot of fat on that duck. And it's just going to render itself out, yeah? So I'm just gonna put salt on, and I'm literally just putting it skin side down into the pan. Starting it from cold means that, you know, you're taking a little bit of time for that fat to start melting, to start rendering, rather than if you throw it into a hot pan, it's just going to seize, and that fat is not going to kind of have an opportunity to come out. So cold, dry pan, and you'll see how it's going to start releasing its own fat before too long. So I've got these big pieces of breast. I'm seasoning it quite generously, as you can see, and I'm gonna grab some pepper and put some pepper on as well. You see the fat is coming out already. Okay. Okay, so look how much fat has come out of the duck. It's on medium heat now, and it's been about 8 minutes, almost 10 minutes. And look at the skin here. So this is what we're looking for. So don't move it around too much. If it's stuck, just give it a little bit of a kind of a shimmy. Turn around. This is beautiful. This is what's going to give us so much flavor. The legs are looking good as well. Just a little bit more for this one. If your onions, you can see, are going a little bit brown, I'm just going to add a little splash of water into Joe's onions. That's it. Lower the heat a bit. Let's turn this duck leg. So just searing it on the meat side. Then I'm going to take them out for a second, just put them on the plate. Gonna put my onions in, get all those crispy bits out, put the duck back in with the onions, put the water in, cook it slowly, and then we're gonna add the potatoes in a little bit later. I think this is good. So look, so I'm gonna give it another second. Okay, it looks nice and brown on the other side as well. So I'm gonna take it out. See how it's going quieter. And then the onions go in. There we are. Because the onions are releasing moisture to kind of scrape off all the duck juices. But also if you feel like I just need a little bit of help here, you can also put a little bit of water in. And then it's so easy to scrape those bits off. The water is going to evaporate fast enough, and then the onions can will have an opportunity to get nice and kind of soft and a little bit brown as well. But there's so much flavor coming from that perfectly golden, beautiful duck skin. I just love this dish so much. So imagine all of these kind of like oniony, ducky juices from the stew will be absorbed into these puffy dumplings. It's just one of the most delicious things ever. And traditionally, we would actually eat it with a glass of kefir on the side as well, which is really nice, and some pickles, definitely some gherkins or some kraut. But yeah, gherkins and kefir I highly recommend to have in the house to serve with this dish. Joe's onions are looking nice and soft, and I'm just gonna, his pan is a little bit small. I'm tempted to take the onions out and let the mushrooms catch a little bit of color, which I think I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna scoop them out for a sec. If you're making this in a big pan, you know, you might not need to do this step. You just throw the mushrooms in with the onions. Right, so I'm gonna use all of these shiitake. It might need a little bit more oil actually. So shiitake are going in. I'm gonna do it in batches. So I'll put the shiitake in. It's on medium-high heat. And I'm just gonna make sure that they're covered in oil, but I'm not gonna touch them too much. I want them to catch a little bit and develop some flavor. So mushrooms in, a little bit of salt, and I'm just gonna leave them be, okay? I'm not gonna touch them for a sec. All right, here, things are looking really nice and delicious. Look at these onions absorbing all of that. dark fat and all of the crispy bits. I'm gonna put the duck back in. Duck is going back in. I'm just putting it kind of flesh side down. The juices in here as well. And the water. Doesn't have to completely cover the duck because we're going to put the lid on and it's going to kind of steam and poach in this liquid. Just a little bit more salt in this liquid. Just a little bit more salt. And actually a little bit more pepper as well. And a bay leaf, which I had over there. Oh, thank you, Kai. A little bay leaf, fresh from the garden, but you can use dry as well. My grandma used dry. And I'm just going to put it in here. And bring it to a low simmer, not too hard. Those mushrooms sound like they definitely need a little bit of a turn. So when you hear the mushrooms are hissing a bit, as if they just haven't got enough, moisture in there, just have a look at them because it might be kind of getting a little bit too dark there. So I'm actually just going to grab a little bit of water and deglaze that pan there. Just like that. Don't worry, the pan is so hot. It's going to evaporate quite quickly. And then we can take the mushrooms out for a sec and put the next batch in with some oil. So shiitake add a little bit of kind of a firmer texture. That's why I love adding them into this dish. It just gives it a little bit more of that kind of meaty almost bite. And I do like these portobellini, like they look really sweet. And actually, I'm also just going to put them in whole. I'm not gonna cut them up. You're more than welcome to cut them, but I think it's nice to have almost like a substitute for meat, So I'm just gonna put them in whole in exactly the same way. I'm just gonna put them in and not touch them too much. And just turn them when I can hear that they need a bit of turning. With some black pepper. As you have noticed, I've been seasoning at every step. This way I know that each little bit of food that I've been cooking has had enough of the seasoning. So at the end, when I taste it, I very much doubt that I'll have to adjust the seasoning, and just layers the flavor in a much better way. Okay, I'm also making this stock, which you can see probably from, it's for another recipe, but I'm just going to take the foam off. 1 second. So it's all the blood and all of the kind of, comes out looking like scum. So all of these impurities I'm picking up with a big spoon, and I'm going to discard them later. And like, again, a bit of that fat as well. We want some fat, but maybe not quite as much as we've got here. You might need to do it a couple of times because things just keep coming up. I did wash the meat before kind of adding the water as well, just to wash away some of that blood that was on it. But it's still, see, you still might get some of these little bits. And I'll come back to it and do it again in a bit. Okay, so the mushrooms are all kind of like nice and fried and brown and delicious. I've just put oil in, and I want to brown Joe's potatoes. And if you want, you can also brown the potatoes separately for the duck version, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to throw them in and just cook them in the duck juices without browning, because I feel like there's enough of those flavors, you know, the caramelized flavors from the duck skin. But here, I think you could add a little bit more flavor before you fry the potatoes. And a bit of salt and pepper. And I'm gonna leave them be for a sec, just so they get a little bit of that color. And then I'm gonna do another batch like that. And then we're gonna put it all together, the mushrooms, the onions, the potatoes, add a little bit of water, and just leave it there to bubble until the potatoes are nice and soft. And then we're gonna put the dumplings on top. Okay, so I haven't touched them at all. I'm just gonna give them a little, look at that. Look at that color. We don't have to go crazy, so I'll do one, kind of like, wait another minute or so. This is enough of caramelization to give it the flavor that I want. And then I'm gonna do another little batch like that. We're gonna put it all back in and cook it. Okay, the potatoes are nice and brown. I've just added just a tiny bit of water to deglaze it a bit. And look, all of the mushroomy kind of liquid in there. Then I've got my water that's gonna go in, but it doesn't have to be. You can be vegetable stock, or you can put some water over some dried mushrooms and use that kind of like dried mushroomy liquid. I actually have my amazing producer and cameraman Kai's wife, Natalia, who you know from the mushroom pancakes video, has given me some mushrooms that she foraged and then dried and then turned into a powder. So I'm actually gonna add that to my water. And then, you know, I'm not kind of like steeping it in hot water or anything. It will all kind of happen in the process of cooking when it heats up with all of the stuff. Okay, so potatoes in. Look, they're nice and kind of brown. We're just gonna swirl them around in those juices a bit. And then the mushrooms go and the onions. Oh, it smells amazing. And I mean, it's just 3 ingredients. That's the thing. That's the food that I really, really love. My favorite type of thing is when it's very simple, good ingredients, not too many, and you can really taste them. And this smells of autumn to me. And it smells amazing. It's extremely comforting. So that's it. And then I'm going to go in with my mushroomy water. Just like that. And I'm gonna just season it just a tiny bit more. Just a little bit of salt. And afterwards I'm gonna taste it. I'm gonna taste the potatoes, taste the mushrooms, and maybe just a tiny bit more pepper, because this dish really does love a bit of pepper. That's it. We're gonna cover it, and basically you just need for the potatoes to become nice and soft, and then we'll put these puffy dumplings on top, and delicious. I just had this thought. These are actually amazing get ahead dishes, because you can make the duck stew, you can make the mushroom stew the day before, and it'll probably, you know, become even better overnight, developing all of those flavors. And then just on the day when your guests are coming, all you have to do is the dumpling bit, you know, so kind of splitting it up into these 2 days is fantastic. It just makes it super easy. So people come over, you just reheat your stews, make the dumpling dough, pop the dumplings on top, and you're off, you know, and it takes less than half an hour to prep your dinner. Okay, so duck has been nicely kind of cooking for about half an hour. It will need a lot longer. You know, we want it to kind of like fall off the bone. But it's been half an hour. It'll probably be another half an hour before it's nice and soft how I want it to be. But I'm gonna this is raw potato, and it's going to take a while, yeah? And I don't mind if even some of them break up a little bit. It will just nicely thicken the stew. So I'm just dropping them in. Normally, my grandma makes it with pork ribs, and she does fry the potatoes as well, just how I did with the mushrooms. but I don't know. I spoke with my mom this morning actually about her duck version, and she's like, you know, duck has so much flavor, you don't need to fry the potatoes. And I was like, yes, one less step. Thank you, mama. Okay, so the stew, both of them have been on for about 45 minutes. The duck is kind of getting there. The potatoes are still a little bit firm, but you can put the knife through them, so they're kind of like getting ready. Keep it in mind that these dumplings, once we put them in, they need about 30-40 minutes to cook under the lid, so things will keep cooking in the stew as well. Right, let's just get to it. So I've got 500 mils of ryażanka, which is kind of like a baked milk kefir, and it's got this really lovely sweet flavor, but you can use normal kefir, as I mentioned. Then we're gonna go in with our 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. So it's just going in. Then I'm also adding 1 tablespoon of vinegar. I think there's enough kind of acid in the kefir to activate the baking soda, but my grandma did it this way, and who am I to change her recipe? So vinegar, sugar, salt's gone in. Then I'm gonna do baking soda. Oh, actually, sorry, also a little bit of oil in there, like a tablespoonful. Tablespoon of oil. Okay, so that's all of our wet ingredients in. And then I'm gonna do soda, a kind of like a full teaspoon into the flour. I'm using white spelt, but you can use plain white flour, is absolutely fine. And I normally don't bother sifting things, but again, I'm just gonna follow my grandmother's recipe. So I've just kind of like roughly mixed the baking soda in just like that with the back of a spoon, but I'm gonna sift it into the liquid, and that should mix it quite nicely. So there we are. I'm gonna do a little bit of this sifting situation. And she would have had like one of those flat wooden sieves. I need to get one of those. I used to have one, but not anymore. All right, so all of this flour is going in. You can speed it up a little bit by going in with your hand. With the spoon, and just kind of just mix it through the liquid like this, and it's going to look like quite a rough dough to begin with. So first with a spoon, and then I'm going to go in with my hand, and we're going to end up with a rough looking dough, but we'll leave it for a minute just for the flour to hydrate, and then we're going to roll it out and turn it into our delicious dumplings. So literally just going in like this. The dough feels wet. It's supposed to. Don't worry. After it rests for about 7 minutes or so, we will roll it out, knead it out first with some extra flour on the surface, and it'll be perfect. So just making sure that there's no dry pockets of flour in there, that it's all kind of homogeneous, but looks rough, so it's fine. Okay, take it off your hands, gonna cover it, and then we're gonna give it a knead in about 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna split this dough in two so it's easier for me to work with. And as I cut it, you know, it's gonna be really wet on this side, so I'm just going to put a little bit of flour there. And again, just give it kind of like a quick knead and form it into a ball. and leave this one on the side. And this one I can start rolling out. So cover the dough that's resting for a second. Just cover it with a tea towel so it doesn't dry out too much. Okay. My lovely Honey & Co. towels that are blue and yellow. And make sure that you've got a nice kind of dusting on flour on your surface. You will need a little bit of sunflower oil and a brush, but you can also use a hand. So there we are. Got my flour, got my dough. I'm just going to use my hands to kind of help stretch it a little bit. So it's really nice and puffy. And I'm gonna start rolling it out, yeah? So just rotating it a bit and kind of rolling it out. Rotate it again. I've also got a tray with a little bit of, I think this is a remainder of polenta, which is fine, but normally I'd use semolina or maybe even a little bit of flour. Just when you cut the dumplings, you can put them on here and they can wait until the whole process is done. All right, so you keep rolling it out quite kind of thinly. Not so thinly that you can see through it or anything like that. No, I'll show you what it looks like at the end. I'm getting those edges out as well. I do have a version of this recipe where I use yeasted dough and the dumplings come out different. They come out lighter, but I must admit that I think this original version is my favorite. And I wonder if you could, if you're an experienced sourdough baker, if you could also use a sourdough, which they probably would have used, you know, back in the day anyway. Thickness is about something like that, see? Okay, and then we're gonna do a little bit of oil, but I wonder if you could also use melted butter, or even, I'm gonna go with my hand, or even a little bit of melted duck fat. I mean, you know, why not if you're doing it anyway? So there, I've moistened the dough, and I'm going to roll it up like you would with cinnamon buns or something like that. Okay. So rolled it up here, and now I'm also going to do a little bit of a twist like that, as if you're wringing out clothes, you know? Like that. And then I'm going to start cutting my dumplings. So when it's kind of like slightly thinner ends, I'm just going to make them a little bit bigger, and immediately you just put them on pretty side up, and I'm gonna put them onto my tray like that, and then I'm gonna keep cutting the dumplings, making them just a little bit thinner when you get to this middle bit. And look, you see, you get these beautiful patterns on top like that, and I'm just gonna put them on the tray, and they're gonna wait until the other one is done as well. So and let's count. So I've got 12, and I've got, what am I, 12, 14 dumplings. 14 dumplings, 28 dumplings, perfect. So I'm just gonna cover them so they don't dry out while I work with this dough. And we're gonna do exactly the same thing here. Using a little bit of that weight. out. So remember how impossibly wet this dough looked in the beginning. And it is still, you know, it's still wet, but because we've given it that little knead with the flour, it doesn't stick to the hands, but it's really nice and moist. No, well, so now a little bit of oil. Go in with my hand. And then we're gonna roll it up. And twist. And then cut. Both of these stews have been bubbling away for, you know, almost an hour now. Actually, just over an hour, I think. So let me show you. I've just whacked up the heat. They were both cooking with the lid off a little bit, just to get rid of, you know, boil off and concentrate a bit of that liquid. But look, the potato is nice and soft. Oops. And the duck also is getting there. But by the time the dumplings are going to be cooked, it's going to be perfect. All right. And the same with the mushrooms. So they have been bubbling away. And it has reduced a bit and it's looking delicious. What I need now is for both of those to go in a really high heat. My grandma used to say that when you hear that the stew nabrалося духом, it's got the spirit in it. She was quite poetic in that way. That means that it's boiling properly. That's when you put the dumplings in. So I'm putting it on kind of like medium-high heat. It's got the spirit in it. The duck one does. The mushroom is getting there as well. And I'm gonna put the dumplings in, then swiftly cover it with a lid. And they're gonna cook for 15 minutes over this high heat. And then we're gonna turn it down a little bit and give it another 20 minutes or so. And then we're gonna check how they're doing, which they should be ready by then. All right, so in we go, exciting. Remember that these will expand, they will puff up. So, so kind of they can have a little bit of distance in between them. But what you have to work kind of quite quickly. And I'm gonna put a little bit over half into this one, and then Joe can have the rest of the other ones. So they will puff up and kind of like almost join. All right, where should I put another one? Maybe another little one over here, and maybe another little one over here. Now, I'm gonna put the lid on. And that's it. And it's on, just gonna lower it down just a little bit, but 15 minutes medium heat. The mushrooms here are also bubbling away, and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna pop them all around. And I would have normally put all of these dumplings into the duck one, but today I'm splitting them between the two. All right, and then this one, 15 minutes. Then we're gonna lower the heat, give it another 20, half an hour, check, and then we're gonna eat it. Okay, so this is the duck. Da 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 da. Don't they look amazing? Okay, switching it off. And then Joe's. Do do do. Switching it off. Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm going to serve myself some. Look at the puff on this dumpling. And the amazing duck underneath. Potatoes. Okay. Definitely. You absolutely must serve it with some nice gherkins. I got these from a local Polish shop. They have all of these amazing kind of organic ferments and a glass of kefir as well. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bite of each. The duck, look at that. The duck is falling apart. We've got a little bit of this potato, which is really tender and nice, and a bit of this puffy. Look how puffy this dumpling is, and soaked up all the juices from the bottom. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Come on, let's do this. Hot. Delicious. Oh, it's the best. Yeah, this is good. Gosh, definitely some of these. Oh my goodness. They really pop.